Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Determined Gardener. It's almost nighttime, but we are going to make sure that this video is filmed before it gets too dark. Today I am going to talk about one of my favorite plants, and that is orchids. They are beautiful, aren't they? But it's really frustrating when you get them home, you buy them, and in a couple of weeks, all the petals fall off or they die. So I'm going to give you 3 tips that you should never do with your orchid. 3 tips that you should stop doing now to make sure these beautiful plants survive. So let's get to it. So guys, what you don't want to do is overwater your orchids. You never want to do that. If you're doing that, you should just stop right now because it's going to kill your orchid. What you want to do is actually soak it in a bucket of water and soak it for about 30 minutes. You can see this is pretty dry. Normally what I do is I water my orchids about 2 to 3 weeks, no more than that. Here's my hose, right? So what I want to do is water the actual medium, not overhead. You never want to water overhead. You want to actually keep it as close as possible. So you never want to water overhead. If you water overhead, what's going to happen is that this crown right here is going to get water in it and it's going to start to die. So that's the most important thing you want to do. Never water overhead. Keep it really low. So what I'm going to do is fill this up all the way, and this is going to serve as my bucket, and I'm going to leave it in there for about 30 minutes. Typically, it's easier for an orchid to bounce back when it is in need of water than rather when it's actually watered too much, because when you water it too much, then it's going to be harder for it to bounce back, because then you create root rot and then you actually destroy the roots, and there's no way for the roots to bounce back. You can always give it more water when it's thirsty, but it's much harder to actually care for an orchid when it's experiencing root rot. And unfortunately, that's what happens a lot. People overwater these orchids and then they get soggy, their roots get bad, and you have to throw them out. So that's why, for me, I tend to water every 3 weeks. And I think that works for me. If you do happen to get water in this area, this is what you're going to use. Q-tips to make sure you dry off the leaves and you get inside. So I'm just tapping just to make sure that there is not any water in there, and you can see it's nice and dry. If you do get water in there, most likely eventually in a couple of months, maybe even a couple of weeks, your orchid will die and what's called root rot, and you don't want that to happen. So it's been sitting here for about 30 minutes, and what I'm going to do is lift up the inner part of the orchid, and I'm just going to make sure that's all drained out. You can see got a lot of water in there. You can see right here from the roots, nice compact roots, and this is all you need. You should just do that. Maybe you should just do this about 3 times a week, no more than 3 times a week. Throw away the excess water. You don't want to keep any excess water in there. You want to pop it back in, and your orchid is ready to sit at a nice window, a window that does not have too much sun but just has enough sunlight during the day and afternoon shade. Sometimes I use just a regular water bottle and I spray the roots like so. It's okay that your orchid root grows out of the pot. That's what they're supposed to do. If it's growing out, that means it's very healthy. You can see it's changing color. Once it does that, you can see that it's absorbing the water. Now, I want to tell you that orchids actually absorb water through the air, not through their roots. But I just like to do this just to make sure, because it looks aesthetically better. Another great tip that you should never do if you're an orchid lover: don't throw away your orchids if they lose their leaves. That does not mean that they're dead. They are still alive. They just happen to be shedding their leaves just like trees and plants. So what you want to do is have consistent water about 2 to 3 times a week Fertilize them if you can, but don't throw away those orchids in the garbage because they will grow back. A way to tell that your orchid is happy is through their leaves. They will have nice sturdy leaves like this one. If their leaves are droopy or if they start to get discolored, then you know that your orchid is not happy, and most likely you will have to check the pot to make sure if you're over watering or you have to maybe move it to another area. I'm so excited. This is what I'm talking about, right? This is a bud forming. You see it right here. It's nice and healthy. You don't see any leaves or any petals. That's because they all have fallen off. I've kept it right here to identify what colored orchid it is. It's going to burst about 2 to 3 weeks, and I cannot be happier. And if you see right here, there's another one forming right below it. So I am going to get maybe another branch coming out of here. Here, there's another one growing. It's really, really tiny. You can't see it, but there's another bud forming. So three buds after all of these petals dropped. Before I go to my next tip, do me a favor and hit that sub button and that like button to let me know that you are enjoying this content and you're getting good information from it. So another tip that you guys, don't be fooled by a full bloom. When you go into a big box store, lots of these big box stores have these orchids on display with all the petals fully open. Well, you say, what's the problem? You don't know how long that orchid has been blooming in the store. Most likely, it's been there for quite a while, which means that when you get home and you're probably in love with that orchid, it's on its last bloom cycle, meaning that you'll have less time to enjoy the beautiful orchid. Instead, you want to look for an orchid that still has its buds and plenty of them. Okay, guys, are you ready for your last and final tip that you should never do? You should just stop doing. And I'm holding it in my hand right now. Never put ice on your orchids. Lots of stores where you buy orchids say put ice on them, but that is not the thing to do because they are tropical plants and they want actual heat and humidity. They do not want to be frozen. Can you imagine if you had to take an ice bath? So you don't want to keep putting ice cubes on your orchids at all. Again, what you can do is give them a nice soaking every 2 to 3 weeks. Water them every 2 to 3 weeks. Don't overwater. But again, leave the ice cubes for soda pop, for any cold drink, lemonade, iced tea. Don't put them on your orchids. Okay guys, so I'm going to wrap this up because the person behind the camera, which is my husband, he's complaining that the bugs is eating him alive. So we're gonna run inside and get dry because all the rain, as you can see, is coming down. So again, thank you so much for joining me here on my channel, The Determined Gardener. If you got any information or any valuable information from this video, don't forget to hit that subscription button, that sub button, that subscribe button. Also hit the notification and share this video with your family and friends. Until next time, guys, thank you so much. Bye-bye.